This is the Marathon Handbook Podcast, and you are listening to a very special preview edition of the 2025 London Marathon. And I am joined today by the Kate Middleton of the pod, Caitlin Tossi, and our very own Meghan Markle, Alex Cyr.
Come on. I was getting ready to do my Prince Harry impression, but you're not going to hear it.
Oh, I don't even know if I know what Harry sounds like. And I guess do I get to be King Charles? I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point.
Take it.
All right. So we're talking all about London. We just come back from Boston. Caitlin is in the wilds of Maine right now.
Yep.
Alex Cyr, you've flown across the United States, and where are you right now?
I am deep in the valley of Silicon. I am about 500 meters away from YouTube main campus, YouTube HQ, but my more immediate whereabouts are inside of a hotel room at the Marriott.
So you're meeting with YouTube, and yet you're inside a Marriott holding up a shotgun mic talking to us on your laptop. I love it.
With shoddy lighting.
With crappy lighting. Okay, so if you don't watch the podcast, we put the podcast on YouTube and on Spotify as well. And let's do a little little housekeeping first here. So we had a great deal of success with our Boston coverage. It was blanket coverage. We did a preview pod as we're doing here for London. We did our live watch along show. We had a live show in Boston as well that we did that we will put out at some point on the feeds. And we also did our live watch along show streamed on YouTube as well as an instant reaction podcast. It was a lot. It was a lot of talking, and Caitlin inserted in a little Boston Marathon run in the middle there.
Yeah,
which she's
casually.
still recovering from. Yeah. How are the legs doing?
They're all right. Calves are a little sore, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Downstairs is a bit tough.
Yep.
But so what we're going to do here is we've got the preview show going here. We're going to jump into unpacking this event, this experience, the elite races in just a second. We're going to, I think, Caitlin and I are discussing trying to figure out how we're going to do a live watch along show for London. It's at a really weird hour for people in North America. It's at like 3:00 in the morning Eastern time. But we will definitely send out a link if we get that set up. We'll send out a link in advance via our newsletter. So if you don't subscribe to the newsletter already, we'll put a link in the show notes and subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll get a notification with the link to the live watch along stream. Because I know it's tough for some people to watch this race around the world. We'll talk about how you can watch it and stream it in just a second. And then Alex, wherever you're going to be at that time, you'll still be in California. I think we're all going to do an instant reaction podcast as soon as London is wrapped and we can all get into the studio together virtually. Okay, gang, London Marathon. It's this Sunday, April 27th. It is the third World Marathon Major of the year. I'm going to get you guys to play that fun game that we all know and love, which is power ranking the World Marathon Majors as you see them totally subjectively right now. We'll do that later on in the podcast. But let's go through the little run of show here first. Men's and women's fields. The wheelchair races start at 8:50, which is 3:50 a.m. Eastern time, so 8:50 local. Elite fields are at 9:05 for the women's race and then 9:35 for the men's race. So there's a half an hour stagger between the two of them. That's 4:05 and 4:35 Eastern time for all of those who are early birds looking to get up and watch the race before running a long run themselves. And then the mass participation waves start at 11:30. Sorry, go all the way through until 11:30 p.m. There's quite a few waves. It's a massive race. How do you watch it? It's always a big question. And it looks like if you're in the UK, you can watch it on BBC. They have really good coverage. If you have a VPN, you can tunnel in through the BBC iPlayer. That's a sneaky hack you can do right there. Because I believe it's offered for free through the iPlayer. You just have to register. And then there are a bunch of live streams as well. ESPN is apparently showing the race in the US, which is cool, on the broadcast network. And then FlowTrack will also be live streaming the event. So if you've got a FlowTrack subscription, you'll have access to it. I believe in Canada, the United States, and a couple of other territories, it's going to be streamed there. And then we'll put out a link with like basically everything you need to know on how to watch the event, and we'll put that in the show notes as well. Okay, gang. Much has been talked about how popular this race is, and how like this race is sort of rivaling New York City for demand for getting into it. Do you guys know, just off the top of your head, how many people applied to get into the lottery just to run this race?
Last year, I heard over 700,000, and then I heard this year there were more. So what's that? What does that mean? A
It's like
million?
we're almost getting up to a million. It was like 850,000, I think, something around there.
Oof.
Well, yeah, it was a
Wow.
ton of people just fighting for those spots. And I mean, only fighting for what, 55,000 spots, roughly?
It was 840,318 people applied
Wow.
Wow.
for 53,700 finishers. So there was about 50, I think it was about 55,000 spots. It's kind of amazing, actually, that like both London and New York have really high finisher rates, considering like you
Yeah.
think about like a typical marathon, you wouldn't anticipate that nearly everybody who starts the race actually finishes the damn thing. So it's kind of cool that people are so committed to getting a big race like this done. So, I mean, very briefly, when this race completed, it really only lasted. Hold on, it lasted until New York, so it was a couple of months. London was considered the biggest marathon in terms of participation of all time, with that 53,700 finishers last year. New York exceeded that, I think, I think it was 54 or 55,000 people. So we're talking
Wow.
more or less the biggest race in the world, one of the biggest races in the world.
I'm just
This is a
thinking,
this
no,
is a
I
conversation for another day. But I've been creeping Strava, and I've started to wonder if these races are getting too big, or if they need to add another corral. A lot of people's first kilometers in the Boston Marathon were their slowest kilometer of the race, even though they're bombing it downhill. You told me yourself, Caitlin, you were totally encumbered by a bunch of people in the first 5K. So I'm wondering, like, if these races are getting too big. But this is for another day. But my God, more than 840,000 people means, like, if you're in a lottery, you have one in roughly 17 chances at getting in to the London Marathon. That's minuscule.
Yeah,
That's insane. It's insane. And I feel exactly, Alex, what you were saying. I know I talked about it in the instant reaction pod. With only 30 something thousand people running the Boston Marathon, I was like completely boxed in. And now, and when I was actually going over it in my head after the instant reaction pod, because you guys have to know, I came right off the street. I was probably not 100%. I think it was even more like 10 kilometers that I actually felt like it was super crowded. You know, not even the first five. It was longer, to be honest. And I think you're right. Another conversation for another day, but thinking about how can we get spread out a little bit more, because I mean, imagine London now. You're talking 20,000 more people, 20,000 more of your closest running friends in there. How boxed in people will feel during those, I don't know, maybe the first half.
I'm here to report that, having covered it last year, and also my wife ran the race last year, so I have an eyewitness account of the organization. It's the best organized of all of the majors, and all of the majors are well-oiled machines. They have a lot of logistics to cover, but they've been at it for a long time, and obviously they've got a lot of resources, a lot of money, and the goodwill of the city, the buy-in from the municipality, right, to make it happen. In London's case, the description I got was the start of the London Marathon, because they actually start the race in a bunch in pods. Like you're separated into smaller groups, and your starts are all over the place in a park in the far east end of the city, and you then converge over time, and sort of like this gradual. The design of the courses is actually theoretically a few different versions of the course depending on where you're located at the very start, which is kind of an interesting, intriguing idea. That you might run the race 3 or 4 times, and you're never really running effectively the same start of the course 2 times in a row. And it's the most well organized start ever. You don't feel like you're running a big city race in the very beginning. It's not clogged with people yet. Now that happens later on in the course as you get deeper into the race, but at least the first few kilometers are fairly stress free. And it's the only marathon major where you can hold on to all your gear and then drop your bag off at the bag check like literally 5 minutes before you start the race. It's
Oh,
unlike
nice.
Boston where it's like you need to leave the bag at the finishing area well in advance, and then you've got to go out there with all your throwaways and
Hmm.
huddle around underneath a tent for an hour trying to keep warm. This one is like extremely well constructed for having race day success. So
Good to
the
know.
race has been going on. I was surprised to see this. I mean, that the races only began in 1981. It sort of started in the afterglow of the New York City Marathon. The New York City Marathon had been going on for about a decade prior to that and had grown from, we did this last year when we did the preview pod for New York, talking about the origins of the race. I mean, the New York City Marathon only started with a couple hundred people in Central Park and then grew very quickly into several thousand people. And so by 1981, a couple of Londoners, Chris Brasher and John Disley, decided to put together the race, and they got really pretty much instant interest, overwhelming interest in doing the event. 22,000 people applied for the first race, but they were only able to accommodate 7,700, and 6,255 people finished the first
That's a
London
huge
Marathon.
DNF rate. That's a massive DNF rate.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
actually is over 1,000 people didn't finish. Yeah.
Like 1 in 5 people who started the marathon did not complete
Yeah.
it.
That's like kind of neat. I mean, that's a neat stat to look at over the years of like what major marathon DNF rates are, because it seems like they've one real success story for the growth of running is that like they've clearly trended downwards to like, certainly with the majors, the DNF rate is quite low now when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, right? If you got 55,000 people starting a race and 53,000 and change finishing the race,
Hmm.
that DNF rate is minuscule compared to that like whatever 12% DNF rate from the first edition of the London Marathon. Um, Surprising stat here for both of you that there have been just 6 world records set at the London Marathon over the years. That's kind of surprising considering how fast this course is. We'll get into the elite races in a minute and kind of what the framework is going to be for these elite races. And spoiler alert, there's been talk of world records for these elite races this year. And it is a flat, fast course. The first 5K are actually quite fast and net downhill. You see the fastest 5K splits in all of the marathon majors in this race at times. So I was surprised to see that only 6 world records have ever percolated up in the London Marathon.
Seems like on the women's side of things, it's been business as usual with like a world record broken every few years. So there was Greta Weitz, Ingrid Christensen, and then Paula Radcliffe all setting new marks between 1983 and 2003. But on the men's side, the majority of men's new world records was set elsewhere. The only man to break the world record and set new world record in London, Khalid Kanuchi from 2002 ran 2:05, which now feels long forgotten now that we have so many men who've run faster than 2:05. What do you guys think was like the coolest London Marathon moment? Is it Paula Radcliffe's 2:15, which was
Absolutely.
seen that was like seen as something that would never be broken at the time?
Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the longest standing world records, right? Because she had that world record for 16 years. No one got even
Yeah.
close to it for such a long time, right? That was 2003. So I think that was one of the big defining moments in the London Marathon, that world record was set and it took 16 years to break. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I would say for sure. I think the signature moment in London to this day is definitely Paula Radcliffe's 2003 world record when she ran 2:15:25. I mean, the fact that she's from Bedford, England, which is kind of a bedroom community of London, not far from London. And so she's effectively, the hometown girl in London at the peak of her powers in 2003. And not only does she run a world record in her hometown race, she like just absolutely smashes, I believe, her own world record at the time by a couple of minutes and sets this world record that I think a lot of people at the time, certainly myself, I remember when that happened, I thought to myself, like, this record is never going to fall. That's like
Hmm.
crazy. 2:15. Like, there's no way somebody's going to run faster than that. Of course, like fast forward fast forward 20 years and now it's 209. So
Hmm.
and we'll get to that 209 and the athlete who ran that 209 in the elite section, because Ruth Cheptegei was on the start list, the entry list for this race, although there's been a little twist in the plot there. Um,
Now,
Lots
I
of
know
Guinness
you
World
guys,
Records.
yeah, lots of, yeah, this
Mm-hmm.
one is big for the Guinness World Records. I was going to ask you guys a question because you guys are so, you know so much about these races' history. So who has the most victories in the London Marathon? Repeat victories. Do you guys remember on the male and the female side? I'm going to give you a hint that there are
Yeah.
4 for each of them, which is a
Okay.
lot. 4 victories, but do you know who they are?
Yes, I do.
Of
And
course
I'm
you do,
waiting.
Alex.
And 4 and 4, Ingrid Christensen of Norway ties Eliud Kipchoge, one woman, one man, both with
Right.
4.
I knew Kipchoge, but I was like, I know
Yeah.
that there's a woman in the, yes, Ignorant Christian. Yeah. In the 80s.
Yeah, Kipchoge's like Mr. London, right?
Yep.
He's
Yeah.
got 11 major marathon wins, 11, and 4 of them, so call it almost half, happened in London. And unlike Miss Christensen, Kipchoge has a chance for a 5th, or at least I think so.
We'll talk about that in a second. We'll do like, well,
Yeah.
let's
Because Andy
we'll
Jones
focus
sure
on the
thinks
elite road.
so.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of our inside information that
Yeah.
we've got as well from the weekend in Boston. Some we've got an Eliud Kipchoge update that we can share with the audience here when we get into the elite races. So the course itself, as I said before, quite flat, unsurprisingly, extremely historically scenic. So it starts, as I mentioned before, it starts in southeast London. One of the really nice things is that the Tube, the London Underground, the vast subway network in London, is open and free for everybody on race day, and so it's really easy to get around. As a runner, it's really easy to kind of like stay pretty much anywhere in the city and get to the start line fairly easily. And like I last year we were staying out in Wimbledon, way west in the city, and my wife had no issue getting to start via public transit, which was great. So it starts in Greenwich Park, and then it finishes one of the truly spectacular finishes, like just jaw-dropping finishes in all of running, which is you run through beautiful St. James Park in the end of the race, and then you hang a hard right, and then you hang another hard right, and as you're turning, you're passing by Buckingham Palace, and then you're running through what they call the Mall, which is just this large open area in St. James Park, and you finish on this huge straightaway with these massive grandstands all around you, and then you get funneled into the park, this extraordinary park, in the finishing chute, and then after that, you can kick out into Trafalgar Square area and wander over to a pub and get a nice cold pint, as one does. It's just really like a phenomenal. It's a phenomenal last kilometer of the race, and really like idyllic finishing area. If you get a nice day, it's just like everyone's hanging out in the park afterwards. The flowers are coming out because it's April in London. It's just a really beautiful afternoon for running. And the crowds in London are spectacular. People are super into the race, and it's almost like too much in the finishing area.
So what's more iconic, the Mall or Boylston?
Oh, yeah, with the especially because it has the 2 turns at the end, like the turn onto Boylston,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
screaming. Does the screaming
yeah.
compare to Boston?
The 600 meters that feels like 5,000 kilometers if you're running the
Yes.
Boston Marathon. Um, I think probably Boston still takes the cake with
Okay.
that. But from a spectator standpoint, sitting there in the grandstand and seeing this opulent Buckingham Palace in the
Yep.
distance, and in all the Union Jack flags, and the Brits, it's just everything is very kind of prim and proper and nicely groomed, and that park is gorgeous, and it's a really nice area to wander around in afterwards. Like if you're as a runner, just to like Caitlin, you just when you cross the finish line in Boston, you're funneled through the back end of Boylston Street and
Yep.
Back Bay area, and then everyone's kind of like wandering around. You can spill out into the Boston Common eventually, but it takes a
Uh-huh.
little bit of a hike to get there of several blocks. In London, it's like you cross the finish line, you walk through the finishing chute, and then you're into this like lovely park where you can just sit in the grass, you know?
Beautiful. Yeah.
And there's like a real like festival vibe in the finishing chute area. So it's some of the sites that you see along the course, that make this race a real draw for runners internationally. Obviously, is you get to see. We'll do a little quiz here. We'll do a little London trivia here. You run
Okay.
by at mile 6 the Cuddy Sark.
Mm.
Does anybody know what the hell the Cuddy Sark is?
I looked it up, so I cheated.
That's okay. That's
That's
okay.
okay.
And I'm reporting that it wasn't at all what I thought, and it probably would not have been one of my top 10 guesses. So Cuddy Sark is a loose translation from a Scots slang meaning dress that's too short. Basically, sark as in silk, cuddy as meaning it was cut and it's too short, and it means refers to this like ship, this statue on a ship, or this statue of a, what is it, like a 19, it's a woman. It's a woman on a ship, and it references this poem from the 19th century poem. So it's like a woman wearing a dress, right?
We're gonna get Alex reciting poetry in a moment here.
Robert Burns, I think. Robert Burns
There you
poem, right?
go.
So the witch
There you
wearing
go.
the cuddy sark, like the nightgown, like the short nightgown or something
Yes.
like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I never thought we'd be talking about Robbie Burns on a running podcast, but here we are.
We are.
So it's a museum now, but it's like one of the real like standout monuments in London. Another one that you run by at about 12 and a half miles is the Tower Bridge. Anybody have a fun fact about the Tower Bridge?
I do. I have well, first of all, the other day when I was going over at these different landmarks, I wanted to see a picture of this tower bridge. And it is not what it is absolutely spectacular. It's like a drawbridge, but a suspension bridge. It's got the two towers there. It just looks absolutely, I don't know. Well, we're just, we don't see castles and towers and things like this in the States, or definitely not in Costa Rica. So it was so magnificent just looking at this bridge. And I realized that there's this really kind of creepy story about this bridge. So it's a story about the princes who are left in the tower. So, yeah, it's kind of creepy. A very dark, a mystery in British history. So in 15th century, uh, Edward V and his 9-year-old brother Richard were placed in the Tower of London by their uncle, the Duke of Gloucester. So he was supposedly their protector after their father's death. And so he put them in this tower. Now, we assume that they got put in this tower because he wanted to become king and didn't want the sons to become king, right? So he put the two boys in the tower, and the boys vanished. Right? They vanished. Now, Richard declared himself king as Richard III, and many people believe that he actually murdered his nephews to secure the crown. And then centuries later, in the 17th century, they found two small skeletons buried beneath a staircase in the tower. So,
Oh,
They did? Like, this is not
yeah.
part of the legend? They actually found the skeletons?
Two skeletons, and they say that, well, they're not sure. The mystery has not been solved. They don't know if it were the princes or if it wasn't the princes, but they say that they still hear young voices. If you go into those towers, you're going to hear like young voices echoing in the night.
That's something
Creepy.
to make you run fast.
I was gonna say you got to sprint by Tower Bridge.
So that's a
Yeah,
little
this
legend I
is like
found.
this is one of the incredible things about going and running the London Marathon is it's just like steeped in all of this like insane folklore and history. There's just there's a lot of there's a lot of execution talk, a lot of kings and queens and deception and betrayal and overthrow. So another real standout area that you run by between miles 15 and 19 is the Canary Wharf area, which is kind of like it's become the very modern financial district,
Hmm.
right by the water, right by the River Thames, and really nice area to walk around as well, and a lovely area to run by. And then, of course, you pass the London Eye, which is the big, gigantic Ferris wheel. Big Ben, you get to run by Big Ben, which almost feels like running by Big Ben is it does it's a I don't like using the word surreal because surreal connotes like surrealist painting, melting clocks, Dali, and all of that. But it's as close to surreal as you can get because Big Ben is such a weird thing to see in real life. It's
Hmm.
extremely opulent. It's not as big as you imagine it to be, but it's really large for an old clock. It's a very strange thing, a really neat thing to run by. And then, of course, Buckingham Palace just before you finish, and the Great Mall that you finish in, where the finishing chute is. Um, all right, guys. Weather.
Looking
We're
nice.
looking at, yeah, warning, this will be a no excuses day. We're looking we're looking at like pretty much perfect weather as long as the wind cooperates. It is going to be a bit sunny. We've got 19 a high of 19 degrees by, later in the day, 19 degrees Celsius rather. If it was Fahrenheit, that'd be freezing cold. And a low of 8. So the starting temp is going to be around 8 Celsius. Caitlin, you're our resident American here. Can you translate Celsius into Fahrenheit for us? What's that
Oh
mean?
my goodness. That is terrible that you asked me that
There you
because
go.
I am
I put
so
you on the spot here.
60. No, you know what?
19
Actually,
C.
it seems it's going to be a little warm because 19 is 66 Fahrenheit. So that's a
Yeah, I wouldn't
little,
want to run
yeah.
that.
I would, to be honest, it was 14 this weekend at Boston. It was 57, and I feel like it was very warm. I got a real hot
Yeah,
real fast. And so
yeah.
the low will be 46 degrees Fahrenheit, but that still seems like, it's going to warm up pretty fast. So maybe people will feel that it's a little on the warm side for the marathon.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for elite racers that are starting a little earlier, this is going to
Mhm.
be especially the East African runners who prefer just a touch warmer. I find for the most part, when you talk to the elite athletes, but for the mass field that are starting later and running on their feet for a longer period, 4.5 hours, it could become quite a warm day. But
Mhm.
that I think that these temperatures uh, will not affect elite performances. Let's get into the elite races. Let's talk about the women's elite race first. Which I mean, when they announced the elite field, Alex, it was like this thing was shaping up to be an absolute banger, like a total all
Oh yeah.
timer event.
Yeah, this was going to be the race of the year, if not the decade. On the start list, you had the fastest woman in the world. You also had the Olympic champion, the Olympic silver medalist, the defending London Marathon champion. It was going to be a massive brawl. And then the list started whittling down a little bit. I think the main story, the most important thing to take back from this race is that our top two contenders arguably are out, including Ruth Chepngetich. And her reason for not running is a little unusual in her quote. She said she felt not there physically or mentally, which, hey,
Right.
if you just broke the world record by 2 minutes, she dropped at 2:09 last fall in Chicago. And if you've been the the intrigue of every running fan, runner, and running pundit around the world, I could see how mentally you're finding this difficult. And I'm not sure what's up physically. Sometimes you have a physical injury, and then that means mentally you're not doing well either. It's not easy to be injured. So, long story short, we're not sure what's up with her. But Ruth Chepngetich is off the ballot, unfortunately, as is our reigning champion, Perez Jepchirchir, who was a little bit more candid in her reason to withdraw. She has an ankle injury. So that sucks. She won last year. She set the women's only world record. So, a quick aside, you can set the women's only world record in the London Marathon, which exists because it denotes that you would have, if you're a woman, you will have an unfair advantage if you're pacing with men versus not pacing with men. In London, the athletes go out separately. And so you can set this record. So not only did she win last year, but she set the women's only world record, and she's also out. So who does
I'm
that leave?
disappointed, guys. I'm totally disappointed. I really wanted to see those two duke it out. I wanted to see Ruth Cheptegei show us that she can run 209 again. I mean, I was most excited for this. I'm still excited for the other people you're going to mention in a second, Alex, but I thought that this was going to be the face-off of the decade, like you're saying. So yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer that they're not going to be running, but tell us who else is going to be there, because we still have some amazing runners in the lineup.
Yeah, this is not to say that we have a weak start line here by any means.
Right.
We still have an absolutely elite. I'm going to call it a 3-horse race. The field is very deep, but I think at the very top it's a 3-horse race. Let's present the horses. First, Tigges Josefa, former world record holder, second fastest marathoner in history. She's run 2:11 for the marathon. She has an Olympic silver medal, and she has 2 major marathon wins. She was Miss Berlin for 2 years, 2022 and 2023. Last year, she was at this marathon, and she lost narrowly by just a few seconds to Jep Chir. So she will come back, try to avenge that loss. Competitor, horse number 2, the one athlete to beat Tigges Josefa at the last Olympics, Sifan Hassan. She's our current Olympic champion. She's run 2:13, so she's the 3rd fastest marathoner in history. She's won Chicago and London in 2023. And guess what, guys? Hassan actually has not raced so far this year, which is wild for a woman who races so much that she tried to not 3-peat, but 4-peat, well, until the very end, at the last Olympics. She had set herself up to run the 1,500, the 5,000 meter, the 10,000 meter, and the marathon. She's an incredibly prolific racer, and she comes into this race well rested. So I think that's trouble for everybody else.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Now of course, and then of course Jocelyn Jepkosgei coming in that 3rd spot, Alex.
That's our horse number 3. So 3rd place last year. Unlike Hassan, we know that she's fit. She's been racing this year, so she dropped a 64-minute low half marathon in Barcelona in February, so she's coming in hot. She's also coming in with some considerable London experience. She won in 2021, and this is her 4th London Marathon ever. So these are our top 3 horses for sure. We have a couple more intriguing names on the start line, including Vivian Chariot, who won in 2018. So it's already 7 years ago, right? She's won gold at the Olympics. She's a track star. She has like a huge pedigree, but what's going on with her? And she basically hasn't had a good marathon result in 7 years. And just this winter, we saw her in a half. She ran a 69-minute half. That's pretty good, but it's not a 64. And so let's put her down as a dark horse and an absolute talent who, if she brings it, could do some damage, but also we haven't seen much from her recently. And I got to shout out one more name, okay? I want to shout out Eilish McColgan, who's represented the UK at the Olympics 4 times. She's Scottish by origin, and she's in her marathon debut. So she's been a very accomplished track and field athlete, 10,000 meter Commonwealth Games gold medalist. And I know for a fact that she is quite prepared for this marathon because I met her in the weirdest of places. This
like a campground.
Like a campground. 2 months ago, about a month and a half ago, I did this startup road race called the McCurdy's Micro Race Series, there was a marathon and a 10K, and I did a 10K, and it was myself, 18 other people, and Eilish McColgan on the start line.
Wow.
I could not explain it, but she was there. She was in the area. She wanted a build-up race for London, a bit of a tune-up. She dropped a 31-minute 10K. She ran it by herself. And after the race, I introduced myself and I asked her if she'd like to cool down with me, to which she politely declined and said that she was only halfway through her workout. So she's been putting the work in.
I love it. You got rebuffed by the Olympian.
I mean, she had more threshold to take care of, so fair enough. And so that makes
Yes.
me think that she's probably fit, and it's going to be a homecoming debut for her as well. So I'm
Nice.
expecting something big from McColgan as well. So that's the women's elite field. Who are you
It's
all more
still,
excited about?
yeah,
I'm
it's still an
I'm
extraordinary field.
Yeah,
Yes.
it really is. And even though we lost kind of two of the top women, if you had to guess, you guys would know who I'm going with or who I'm really excited about. But I am such a fan of Sifan Hassan. I was a fan of her, like cheering for her 100% in the Olympics. I'm always on her side. I would love to see her take this win. So I am absolutely going to go with Sifan Hassan. I think she can edge Asefa out, even though she has a slightly slower time.
I I'm rooting for Tigges Sefa. I
Okay.
think that she's stitching together obviously a pretty stellar marathoning career in just a couple of short years. She, of course, really kind of stormed onto the scene with that 2:11:53, which was at that time a world record in Berlin. She showed last year that she's a tough competitor by hanging in there for that second place in London, and then of course in the Olympics was like right down. It was right down to the wire between her and Hassan. I'm most excited about, I think, in this entire race, there's a couple of things I'm excited about on both sides of the men's and the women's elite field. And we'll get into the men's stuff in a second. But I am most excited to see if this duel between Hassan and Asefa that we saw at the Olympics last summer turns into a similar sort of confrontation as we just saw in Boston between Sharon Lokedi and Helen Obiri, where
Mm-hmm.
we saw the race play out in the exact same way, but with this spoiler alert, if you didn't follow Boston on Monday, this incredible reversal where Lokedi was like, not so fast,
Not
Helen
this
Obiri.
time. Not this time.
This is my moment.
Yeah.
And I don't wonder if Tigges Sefa has been dreaming about this for the better part of a year
Mm-hmm.
and has prepared specifically for that attack, because you in the last kilometer or so coming through St. James Park and down that straightaway in the mall, whether or not we're going to get treated to like an all-out sprint between the two of them like we did in the Olympics, which was contentious and exciting.
Yep.
And there was some physical contact between them in Paris. There was some question about whether or not there was like, foul play or illegal maneuvers or whatever. I
Bit of
think
an
both
elbow.
parties in the end, a little bit of an elbow, maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, I know the Hassan fans will argue otherwise, but the Tigges Sefa fans feel like maybe that there was a little bit of unfair treatment in the final turns there in Paris. But this is an opportunity for Asefa to sort of avenge that. And
Mm-hmm.
both of them, Asefa also has a track background, right? She's got a middle distance 800-meter track background. So she does have that speed, and she is on paper the second fastest runner of all time still. So I'm excited to see this. I have a hot take, and I'm wondering if, by all means, the hot take section of the pod is now open. And my hot take is, even without the world record holder, Ruth Chepngetich, and the returning champion and women's only world record holder not returning to run this race, I'm staring at one number here, and that number is the course record for women, 2:15:25 from one. Is she Dame Paula Radcliffe? Has she been knighted yet? If she hasn't been, she should be. From Paula Radcliffe in 2003, which we talked about at length at the beginning. A time I never thought would be surpassed by any woman in history. And now I can't believe I'm saying this is my hot take. I think that on Sunday, that 2:15:25 course record is going to go down by one of those two women, by either Sifan Hassan or Tigges Sefa. And we are going to see a new women's only world record in 2:15 low or 2:14 high, and a new course record for the women's side of the race, which is a crazy, crazy thing to say, but I'm saying it.
Let me throw a hotter take, twice as hot take. Both will break it. Both will break it.
Both. I like
Both will
it.
break it. Both will break it. And to continue this take, I called this a 3-horse race. I think I'm being polite to Jocelyn Jepkosky. I think this is going to be a 2-woman battle. And I am convinced we're going to see. I love that analogy. I think this is going to be Lokedi v. Obiri version 2.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
And
I agree
and
with
like,
both of you. And I think that it's time. I think that it's time to get some records in here because as I was talking with you guys about earlier, I feel as though there haven't been enough records. Like we need to get some fast times, some faster times in London. And I feel like these women are the two that can just take it away. So I was going to go with you, Michael, and now I'm even going to go with Alex and say that let's see them both take it down. Let's see them both take it down with that duel that we're going to see at the end.
so our picks, just to clarify here, Alex, who do you have for the win?
I'm going with Asefa. I'm going with Asefa.
Yeah.
Oh, two versus
Caitlin?
one, two versus one. I'm going with Hassan. I'm going with Hassan. I love Hassan.
And I, of course, am going with Tigges Sasefa as well, with Hassan in a close second place finish in an all out battle. It's going to be
Okay.
awesome. Okay, so let's pivot to the men's race. No less intriguing. You've also got Alex. Like, well, you did such an eloquent job unpacking the
Yeah.
women's field. Like, why don't you take the men's side as well?
Go back to the men's. Okay. Well, the who's dropping out part of this race is a little bit less high profile, but it's still pretty high profile. So let's start with who's not doing it. So Kenenisa Bikili, who's like our king of the track, who's slowly becoming, unfortunately, the king of not starting and dropping out of marathons, will not be doing this race despite being on the start line. We thought that once again we might be treated to a battle of the greats between Kenenisa Bikili and Eliud Kipchoge. I feel like we've explored this storyline like for years because it's always supposed to be these two men battling it out. But now we're at a point where Kipchoge's getting a bit older and Kenenisa Bikili is not starting his races. So the plot line's getting a little thinner.
Mm-hmm.
But there still might be something on the Kipchoge end of things. So who watches golf? I don't. I hate golf, but I know a couple things about it. I can't stand watching golf. But I am a fan of Tiger Woods.
Okay. I like watching golf because I enjoy napping. So
well, that's it, right? Golf is like, it's fun to follow the results because then you have an idea of who won, but actually watching golf on the TV is excruciating.
Yeah,
but I'm a fan of Tiger Woods because Tiger Woods is the example of an absolute master, no pun intended, coming back and assuming his position at the top when everyone thought that he was done. So he would win Masters every few years in the early 2000s, it seemed. Dealt with injury, dealt with controversy, came back, won the Masters in 2019. This race is going to be either Kipchoge's swan song, his Tiger Wood-esque swan song, or it's going to be yet another blow and another little piece of proof that unfortunately his best days are behind him. He's over 40. I still think he's the GOAT of marathoning. Credit to where credit is due to the late, great Kelvin Kiptum, who's run the fastest marathon in history. What Kipchoge has had the good fortune to have that Kiptum hasn't has been time. Like we said, he's won 11 majors. He's won London 4 times. He has 2 Olympic titles. Winning this race would, once his legacy is already cemented, but would strengthen his legacy even more. And I think he has a chance to do it. Not only because I think he's a terrific athlete, but also because we have a little bit of insider information. So if you've been following the latest podcasts on this channel, we've been roping this info into every episode that we've done. We had a chat with Andy Jones, who is a leading, like truly world leading physiologist. He's the beetroot guy. He's the guy who pioneered research about beetroot and how it might actually help performance in distance running. He has his hands all over cutting edge research, and we had him on stage in our recent live event. And at some point, one of us asked him, because we were all wondering, what's Kipchoge thinking for London? And Andy Jones looked at us and said, he wants to win. He thinks he can win. So that's to me.
And he said that. Andy Jones said that, not just, I think Eliud Kipchoge thinks he can win. He was like, I've been texting with Eliud, and Eliud feels like he's training at the highest level right now, and the workouts are pointing to an extremely high level performance. He's healthy. He was battling injuries in 2024 that he has not really talked about extensively yet, and that he's ready to go and that he should be able to compete for the win. So not only is Dr. Andy Jones the beetroot guy, he's sort of like the guy in exercise physiology in the distance running world over the last, I'd say, 20 years. And he was instrumental in he led the sports science for the Breaking4 project and for Kipchoge's subsequent sub 2 hour run in 2019 as well. And he also worked with Paula Radcliffe through her peak years as well. So the guy knows what he's talking about. And the fact that he's like, got Elliot as a contact in his phone. I wonder what Kipchoge's picture is. Is it just like a picture of like Kipchoge like meditating? Is it a picture of him like reading The Alchemist? Is it just a photo of Yoda and it says the Kipper when the phone rings?
No,
I
it's
think
it's that amazing
Bitmoji.
smile. No,
Yes,
I bet it's that.
oh, Caitlin. Caitlin, it's that amazing smile.
It's that amazing smile he has. It's so contagious. That has to be the photo. And of course, just to build on that, you guys know the day. I mean, if Dr. Andy Jones says that he could definitely win, I'm going to believe him. But I want, Kipchoge needs a really good race. We've seen his last couple of performances. We saw what happened in the Olympics. We saw what happened in the last time. He needs a really great run and a great race to kind of say, okay, I'm going to tie this all up with a bow. Not saying he needs to retire from anything, but just say he needs a comeback to feel really great about. So I just wish for him that all of this amazing training, if all the science is pointing towards yes, his mental game is going to be there. He needs a bit of a comeback from his recent performances. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's going to do on Sunday.
Yeah, but if the Kipchoge of 2024 is the one who shows up, we're in danger of not even having him be in the conversation. So
yeah, which would be tough.
Yeah,
which would be really tough. So this is not a one-horse race. Will Kipchoge do it or not? There's a lot more to this race, the men's race.
right.
It might not be as illustrious as the women's field, but we have a couple other contenders who are super intriguing. So let's start with last year's champion. So the defending champ is back, Alexander Matiso Munyao. So sometimes he runs with a bib that says Matiso and sometimes Munyao. So I think he's just because of that, he's fallen under the radar a little bit, but he's become a very tough and frequent customer at these major marathons. So he won his first London last year. He's 28 years old. Just recently, he won a half marathon in Tokyo running 59 low. So he's showing solid fitness, and his personal best is 2:03. I'd say that in the what have you done for me lately in marathon side of things, he's probably the front runner. However, Munyao's 59 low half marathon suddenly starts sounding a little bit cute when you look at who else is on the start list. There's Jakob Kiplimo, the half marathon GOAT, let's call him. He's got a 56 high. He's got the world record. He is debuting in the marathon. And let's bring in another very quick quip from Dr. Andy Jones. When we asked him who's the next one, he briefly mentioned Jacob Kiplimo.
That's right.
As someone who could potentially break the 2-hour barrier flat out. I mean, when you have the type of speed in a half marathon, you could be a menace in the marathon. Now, Kiplimo he'd been training with Joshua Cheptegei and these two Ugandan athletes who dominated on the track and then also in the half marathon. It's hard to know if it's going to translate. So we know what happened with Joshua Cheptegei when he started the marathon. He dropped at 2:08 and then at 2:05 this year in Tokyo. He's on his way to likely a great marathoning career, but that made us see that, success in the shorter races doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to destroy the marathon. So Kiplimo's 56 is still an unknown quantity. Will he be huge in the marathon? We'll see. But this is the marathon debut that I've been most excited for in a while, probably since Cheptegei, truly. And then who else do we have? Oh, the Olympic champion.
Oh, him.
Just the Olympic champion.
I almost take it back. The men's field is nearly as impressive as the women's field now that I really break it down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tamirat Tola was the fourth athlete that Ethiopia sent to the Olympics, the alternate on Team Ethiopia for the marathon who waltzed into the Paris Olympics and just happened to win the whole damn thing. So he's a 2:03 marathoner. He's a very tough customer. He's won New York in 2023. He's on the start list. And then we have a pair of Kenyan athletes who've run 2:02, Sebastian Sawe and Timothy Kipyegon. So 2:02 is elite. Only a handful of men have still gone under 2:03. So yeah, this is tight. This is really tight. If Eliud Kipchoge wants to win this, he is going to have to put together one of the best performances of his career.
It would become a signature performance of his if he wins this race, because I think what's going to happen. Here we go. We're the hot take bar is open. We're serving drinks here, and that's a bad analogy. I gotta workshop that one. I think that because the men's race will have pacers, unlike the women's race where they are targeting a women's only world record, so they are not allowed to use male pacers to aid the race. On the men's side, there will be a phalanx, to use a term apt for a place like London, of pacers blocking any sort of wind and creating a draft and setting the pace and setting a very spicy pace. I think we're going to see them go out in 60 minutes flat or 59, 50 something, because you've got, as you mentioned, two 2:02 guys. You've got Tamarit Tola, who's a 2:03 guy. Munyao, the returning champion's a 2:03 guy. And then you've got right at the front there, Jacob Kiplimo, who has, at least on paper, scientifically speaking, I mean, if he's somebody who's runs 56:43, 59:59 is going to feel like a jog by comparison, right?
That's
so I think we're going to see a sub 2 hour attempt. Now, we haven't got that reported yet. We don't know. They will have what they call a technical meeting on probably Friday or Saturday, where they're going to talk about what the pacers are going to go out in. And I will be very fascinated to see what that opening pace is going to be. And I think it's going to be around that 2 hour mark to give them the opportunity to put them in the window of being able to do that. London likes big moments, and they will create that. They didn't bring Jacob Kiplimo there to run a 2:04. I'll tell you that right now. And then the second thing that I'm really curious to see is who goes with him, who decides to go for it. I think all the aforementioned runners, including perhaps Abdi Nagier, who won silver in Paris last year in the Olympics. You're going to see a group just sort of seeing what that pace feels like. And I wonder if Eliud Kipchoge will be in that group, because that is a fascinating turn of events if he is, and if they run in that pace. I think before we get into predictions here, guys, I think there's another number for us to keep in mind, which is 2:04:15. And 2:04:15 is the world record, the Masters world record in the marathon, which was set by Kenenisa Bekele last year when he came in second in London.
Right.
Sad that we're not going to get the old man boxing match here between Bekele and Kipchoge, because that I think would have been a really interesting subplot on its own, and it also probably would have allowed Kipchoge to he's an ultra competitive guy, so he wouldn't have done this, but it would have allowed them the option to just pace out a 2:03 and see what happens, right?
Have plan B.
Now, exactly.
Yeah.
Coach Caitlin, you love A goal, B goals, and C goals, and you recommend all of your athletes have them. And it sounds like Mr. Eliud Kipchoge has got himself a nice B goal, a nice consolation prize if he can't hang in sub 2 pace.
Exactly.
And that would be crushing that men's marathon Masters world record of 2:04:15, because Kipchoge is, as we know, 40-ish years old. We don't know exactly how old he is. 40-ish, maybe 50. So let's do prediction time here. Caitlin Tossi, who you got?
I would be a terrible gambler. I always go with the heart. I want to go Kipchoge. I want to see him go out with a bang. I know. And I do have Dr. Andy Jones on my side. So that's another reason. He gave me a little bit of confidence there when we spoke with him the other day. So I know I'm going to be the lone wolf out here, but I'm going Kipchoge.
Mr. Cyr, do you dare bet the house? Do you bet the farm on 40-year-old Eliud Kipchoge?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
No.
Not
I
that,
know you will.
not this time. He's the one I want to see Kipchoge win.
Yep.
I would love to see him win. He's the one I'm cheering for
Yep.
actively. I love Kipchoge. I love his legacy. I want him to. I want an all the hits tour. But while my heart is telling me something, I'm going to go with my head and see if I have more success than Caitlin. I think I have to choose last year's defending champion, Alexander
Oh,
Matiso
Oh,
wow.
Munyao.
okay.
He's not yet the household name that is Kipchoge, Tola, or even Kiplimo, but he's got more experience than Kiplimo. He's got more recent success than Kipchoge and Tola at the London Marathon. He's 28. He's still on the way up. He knows how to run this race. And I think this is the race that's going to put him even more on the map for those who just still don't really know his name. So I
Wow.
think he's going to double. He's going to slay massive dragons in the process. So Munyao is my pick.
So
Okay.
we're not, you don't, you, maybe I'm making an assumption here I shouldn't be making, but you're not anticipating a sub 2 hour run here in London then.
It would be far. No, I don't think Munyao. If Munyao wins, that means no one went sub 2. I don't think he's ready for sub 2. I don't think Caplimo is either. I think it would
Hmm.
be too easy to just waltz into the marathon and run sub 2 on your first attempt. I think Caplimo will be more successful than Cheptegei, given that he's faster over half than Cheptegei. And so he won't run a 2:08 like Cheptegei, but he'll run a 2:04 or maybe a 2:05 on his first marathon. Maybe one day he gets there, but I think he needs one to season himself a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, my pick.
Michael.
I'm taking it because it's available to me and I can't believe it's there. It's like doing a draft and it's like you got the number one pick just sitting in front of you. I got to go with Jacob Kiplimo. And I agree with you that
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be sub 2 time in London, but I think they're going to go out, you know, with the option there in the first 10K. And I think they'll split, maybe just above 60 minutes. I think he'll finish sort of close to 202, 201 high. It's going to be an extraordinary debut for him. And I think all the buzz afterwards is going to be, is this guy kind of, is he our next kind of Kelvin Kiptum type figure? Is he our next marathon smashing great runner who is going to sort of manhandle the second half of races in years to come and set a new world record and push this time down below 2 hours? I think we're going to get that sort of hype from him and his electric, infectious smile. He's got a Kipchogean
Yeah.
grin when he crosses the finish line as well, and is a super positive guy. A couple other names to keep an eye out for before we wrap this elite end of the pod here. Alexander Yee, Alex Yee of the UK. He's the great triathlon athlete, the great triathlete that won gold in the Paris Olympics. He's debuting in the marathon. He's been talking like some pretty big talk about what his debut is going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was mentioning something like a 205 or something as his
Yeah.
opening is what he's going to go out at. So watch out for Alex Yee. That's going to be an interesting storyline or subplot.
Mm-hmm.
And then another little one here for like for the real ones you listen here, the ones that are those of you that are dyed in the wool obsessed with elite running. Dr. Andy Jones, as we talked when we were talking to him in that live pod that we did in Boston last weekend, he mentioned one name of a kid that was in his lab. This guy Jake Smith was in his lab, and he said that Jake Smith was one of the like tested like off the charts in terms of like he says he's tested hundreds of athletes over the years for the running economy and various other factors that could be markers that indicate, endurance sports greatness, including like Kipchoge. And he said like to keep an eye out on this Smith kid who's like put together some crazy numbers. Now his personal best going is 211 flat. So, like a good time for a UK athlete, but not extraordinary. But he's saying that those numbers are through the roof. So his physiological markers are through the roof. So keep an eye on Jake Smith. That's an interesting one. Okay, guys, let's close this out with the game you love and you know and hate. Let's pick between our children here. Let's do our updated. What is this? We're recording Wednesday, April 23rd. Our April 23rd World Marathon Majors entirely subjective power rankings. Caitlin, I'm putting you on the hot seat first. What are your power rankings right now, having just been destroyed by the Boston Marathon.
She's wearing the jacket. She's biased.
Yeah,
I
probably biased in
I
the
will
other
surprise
direction.
you.
Let's
Exactly.
yeah, let's hear the rankings here, Alex. Hold on a second. Maybe she's been jilted by the Boston Marathon experience. We're gonna hear it out. Okay, so
Drum
what are
roll,
your power
please.
rankings right now? Yes.
Drum roll. Number 1, London. Boston got bumped.
Okay.
Number
Boston gets bumped.
Wow.
Okay, I
Okay. That's
don't.
petty. That's cold.
No, please do not take it that way. Boston has one of. It's so important to me in my heart. It's my, I grew up in Boston, but just trying to be more objective about the marathon. London, number 1, and we've said it a million times. We're going together. We're all going to run London together. Number
Yes.
2, New York City. Love to give it a try. Boston has now gone to number 3 because it broke my heart a little bit. So a little, it's still a little, it's a little, how can I say that? It's a sore spot for the moment. Ask me again in a week. So I got London, New York City, Boston, Berlin, Chicago, Tokyo, and Sydney.
Okay,
All right.
Mr. Cyr, what are your power rankings? That's cruel. I love it.
In all this anticipation for London, it also ranks first for me. Boston number 2. I was there just enough to fall in love with the whole thing again, and wasn't involved enough for it to break my heart, as in I didn't race it, so that still remains number 2 for me. New York City goes in 3rd. Tokyo for the intrigue, 4. Chicago for the speed, 5. Berlin for the lesser speed, 6. Sydney, total unknown, still 7.
Michael.
All right. We've had some movement on my power rankings.
Oh, yours too.
London is coming in at number 1, and the reason for
All
it
of
is, and
us.
this is just recency bias, guys, all around. I moved London up A because this weekend and I'm excited about it, but B, like, just these elite fields are so good and so deep, and like it's crazy that they lose on the women's side arguably the 2 top entrants in the race, and it's still an incredible and like potentially record breaking field, and we're going to get like high drama, high entertainment. There's like neat subplots between Hassan and Asefa. I find them both really interesting figures in sports right now, and certainly in marathon running right now. So I'm excited to see them compete. And then there's also there's a couple other great athletes there in the mix as well. So like Jocelyn Jepkoska is a great and super competitive runner, and she should be in the mix too. So, and then on the women's side, you've got maybe a sub 2 hour attempt. Then you've got this absolute budding superstar, Jacob Kimblimo. You've got an extraordinary redemption opportunity for the all-time great and the most kind of easily likable figure in all of distance running, Eliud Kipchoge, right? So and just the experience. It's just a top-notch race. It's going to get 50,000 plus people running it. Looks like it's going to be a good day for all. The afterglow is going to be extraordinary. I've got London 1. I got New York down to number 2 now. I've moved Boston up to number 3, and I think that Boston really takes a prominent role in the marathon majors now because, as we saw, like the culture around Boston weekend, you could go to Boston for the entire weekend and just like the immersion into the running experience, like along Newbury Street, all those pop-ups, what all the brands are doing there. There's like Boston's a really important pinnacle moment, of course, as it always is, but I just feels like even more so now. Then I got Chicago primarily because those world records are there and it's just a great race. Then Berlin, Tokyo, Sydney. That's my power rankings at the moment.
All right.
Okay, guys. We did it. We've got through the preview. On to the race itself. We will make sure you subscribe to the newsletter because we will be sending out updates as to like how to watch the race, what if there's any big crazy stories fall out from the race, just as we did with Boston. We've got you covered. We'll send out our complete pre-race preview, including this podcast, a link to this podcast, of course. And also if we're putting together a watch along show like we did for Boston, where we give you our insights and keep you up to date as to what's happening in the race as sort of a second screen experience, or if you can't watch the race yourself for whatever reason. Caitlin and I are going to sort out whether or not we can pull this off at 3:30 in the morning Eastern time. And we will send out a link with a link to that watch along show, probably the day before, so that you've got it in your inbox and you know what's up. If you don't already, subscribe to the podcast, rate and review the podcast as well. It really helps us connect with other runners like yourself. And YouTube wise, Mr. Cyr, you're amongst the YouTubers. You are at YouTube HQ this week. What do we got in the hopper for YouTube? I mean, I feel like we've got a million things in the hopper. We've got like so much content coming out.
We have a lot of shoe reviews coming out soon. I've just received the Nike Vaporfly 4 at my condo in Toronto. So expect a review of that coming up real quickly. We have some like residual Boston content that we're still hashing out and putting together that will release. A lot of like fun and quirky things, like the things we've seen in Boston, the things we did, the people we spoke with. And okay, I am taking yet another crack at this sub 30 10K on Sunday, which is why I won't be involved in the London live show. It's because I'll be freaking out in some other hotel room getting ready to race a 10K at the time. And if I break it, I have so much like vlog footage that I'm trying to put together. This
like a 3.5 hour film.
Yeah. It was going to be like a cute little 7 or 8 minute how to run under 30 for 10K. And now it's become like this terrible odyssey that's taking up all the storage on my phone. So maybe that is going to come out soon. And also maybe not. Let's hope so.
Good luck, Alex.
Mr. Cyr, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You're going to do it.
I feel like I will.
All you got to do is string together 10 sub 3-minute kilometers and you're good to go. It sounds easy, right, Caitlin?
That's all it is. Yeah, of course.
That's all it is.
You'll be fine.
After seeing like handfuls and dozens of men and almost even women running at that pace for 42 kilometers seemingly every weekend right now, it feels like it's not that hard of a lift, but it's harder than it looks.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
So, one thing we will do is we'll gather our trio, we'll get the band together for the post London instant reaction podcast. We will have that go out on our podcast, on your wherever you get podcasts, and then also on our YouTube channel shortly after the race wraps and we are able to get in the studio together and talk about what we saw and what we thought about that race. So keep an eye out for our instant reaction podcast after London as well. And then we're back to sort of, regularly scheduled programming after that, because the two big back-to-back weeks of the marathon majors will be in our rear view and we can focus on other things at that point. All right, gang. All right. Safe travels. Enjoy rural Maine.
Yeah, Acadia National Park.
And enjoy some time off your feet of not running at all, Caitlin Tossi and Alex Cyr. Good luck on the West Coast and good luck with that sub 30 before 30. Let's do it. All right, just as we ended the recording of what we thought was going to be the one and only segment for today's podcast, Alex, Nike dropped a bomb on the entire running world by announcing Breaking4. And I immediately texted you, and I think I just texted, I was going to say 2 words, but it's actually 1 word, all 1 word, Breaking4 with no space in between, maybe an exclamation point. I think that's all the description I needed to alert you to the fact that we were going to need to jump in for an emergency pod. We've lost Caitlin. She is off in the wilds of rural Maine camping now, but let's break this down.
Yeah.
So in 2017, Nike summoned a group of journalists to Monza, Italy, outside of Milan, for a project it was calling Breaking2. Turns out the conceit of that project was they'd assembled 3 athletes, including Eliud Kipchoge, to attempt to break the 2-hour barrier in the marathon for the first time in history. Of course, that event, Kipchoge narrowly missed breaking 2 hours. He ran 2 hours and 25 seconds. But at that time, that was a huge jump from the world record at that time. And also, perhaps more importantly, that event kind of unlocked so much innovation, so much sports science, and also turned Eliud Kipchoge into a celebrity and an icon in the sport overnight, and introduced us to a new technology in running, the super shoe, which has been in our lives now for at least 8 years, if not longer. If you look back before Nike told us that they were actually using these shoes without telling anybody else. But in the last 8 years, yes, in the last 8 years, there's been a lot of evolution in marathon running, and now Nike is pivoting to the track. Explain to me what Breaking4 is.
Breaking4. We might be about to see the first woman to run under 4 minutes in the mile, which is huge. I was waiting for a second breaking something to happen because Breaking2 might have been the sexiest running event of my lifetime. And I'm not exaggerating this. But the problem is you need a really cool barrier. You need a tantalizing barrier for something like this to happen. And I'll be honest, Michael, even though we speculated about this on this podcast weeks ago, that maybe we'd see something something similar for women for 4 minutes for the mile. I just didn't think that it would be that close. Now, for Nike to pull off an event like this, they need a superstar athlete. They do have a superstar athlete. Faith Kipyegon, 2-time Olympic champion, absolute superstar runner, fastest miler ever, but her best mile time to this date, 4:07. Now, Nike thinks apparently that it can use some new technology, which tech has evolved so much in the last few years. I'm very curious to know what this new technology is, but also advanced pacing methods and probably nutrition and sports science methods to take Kipyegon and send her to the moon and make her run a 3:59. Amazing. So this is supposed to happen in June in Paris, which I think Faith Kipyegon likes as a country, this and a city. That's where she won her Olympic gold medals very recently last summer. And now we're waiting to see what else happens. So what was your gut reaction? You were at Breaking2 in 2017. We remember it as the Kipchoge event, but there was a lot more that went into it. What's Breaking4 going to look like?
That's a great question. Here's what we do know. As you said, June 26th is the date. Now, interestingly and somewhat differently than with Breaking2 sort of had a window of a few days that they were working with, because obviously weather is a huge factor when you're trying to execute a perfect marathon. You're trying to execute a perfect conditions for a mile. Perhaps there might be a little bit more flexibility with weather, but ultimately they decided June 26th is going to be the day. It's going to take place on a track in Paris, and they said the exact start time is going to be ultimately dependent on weather. So there will be some specific adjustments based on the weather on the day itself. And we don't know if this is going to be a solo effort on the part of Kipyegon, or if she's going to have some quasi-competitors or teammates to work with in this event. I can say with 99.999% certainty that she will definitely have a troop of pacers with her, and they will definitely leverage that wind resistance and that pacing strategy that they unlocked with Kipchoge and Breaking2. However, obviously there was a component of Breaking2 that was fascinating. Kipchoge is obviously the guy that we think about when we think about the sub 2-hour barrier, because he was the guy who ultimately broke it in 2019 as a solo act in Vienna at that second event. But the first event was him, Sursene Tedesse, and Lalisa Desisa, so 3 Nike athletes that they were kind of throwing all 3 of them at the wall and seeing which one stuck, right? And if I were a betting man, I would say that this event is going to be more shaped around Kipyegon, because she's far and away the most talented miler in the world and the person who's got the best shot at this, Alex, but you ran the numbers, and the difference between Kipchoge's leap from the world record at the time, which he did not have in 2017, to running 2 hours and 25 seconds, to what Kipyegon must achieve from jumping from her own world record, which she set not so long ago, to 3 minutes 59 seconds and 99 milliseconds, is a bigger percentage jump than what Kipchoge had to do.
Yeah. So in 2017, Kipchoge needed a 2.44% improvement on what was then the world record. Kipyegon, in comparison, needs a 3.23% improvement. So these feel like small numbers, but another way you could look at it is say that you almost need not quite twice, but 1.5 times as much of an improvement from Kipyegon. And remember that Kipchoge wasn't able to break the world record even after being one of the first to benefit from this huge technological leap that were the super shoes. So can Kipyegon drop 3% of her time? I would like to say not a chance unless we see this huge technological leap again. So what do you think, Michael? Is it possible that we see some new type of super shoe? Now, we don't talk much about track super spikes on this channel because we're a lot more focused on road, but if you haven't been paying attention to the track in the last few years, world records have been dropping like flies. Average times are getting much faster. There are like 5 or 6 American boys that seem to break 4 in the mile, high school boys every year. And that's a huge testament to the development in track spikes. There's already been a whole lot of innovation. What can we expect to be better? How much can you improve a mile? How can you improve the best miler in the world by another 3% is what I'm asking.
I mean, one of the big shocking takeaways from Breaking4 in 2017 was, of course, this revelation that they had invented this whole new category of shoe, which was really like a real sea change event in distance running. So much so that it caused World Athletics, the governing body of the sport, to change the rules around it. And it caused a real panic in the running industry and the running community. And there was a big question about whether or not the shoes were even legal, or if they were some form of technological doping. And certainly they've had a huge impact on performances all the way from a recreational runner all the way up to the greatest runners in the world. This is well documented by the number of records that have fallen and the overall average running speeds and times of marathon runners of all stripes. We have to remember that Nike is at its core a running shoe company and a marketing machine, a juggernaut, and they don't do this stuff out of the goodness of their heart. Although I do think that this is a very clever play on their part and a smart play to reassert their dominance as the most bleeding edge innovator in running. We got to imagine that there's going to be some sort of a shoe rollout. And it does strike me as a little bit bizarre that, I can't see that they would just roll out a super duper spike, like that they would just iterate on one of the spikes that they've already been developing and had a great deal of success with in the last few years. I'd imagine there might be some sort of like greater recreational runner tie-in here for sure, because it's going to be a big marketing opportunity for them. Although, of course, they don't sell a ton of spikes in the grand scheme of things. So that said, I do think that Nike is in a situation. We saw this. We were in Boston just last week, and we saw that, again, all the other brands have been catching up over the last number of years. And I think Nike's stranglehold on innovation and being at the pinnacle of the technology and the sport under your feet has slipped a little bit. So this is a way for them to reassert themselves for sure.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that Kipyegon doesn't break 4. But even if she doesn't, I mean, this is a mile. There's not that much room for error. She runs 4:02 or 4:03 and obliterates the world record that she already completely owns. What happened at Nike after Kipchoge didn't break 2 hours? Nothing. It just looked great on them. It was an awesome event. And then he did it eventually at another event the year after while wearing Nikes. And so I actually think this is a no-brainer for them to pull off. But before then, now that we know that Faith Kipyegon is the headliner, I think many eyes are going to be on her in the next couple months to see if, well, she's fit or not.
Right.
Because she's racing a couple times before this race. I think that's quite customary for a miler to put in a few hard races before the big event. And we already know that she's racing in 3 days from recording of this podcast. So she's racing on April 26th at a Diamond League event in Xiamen, China, which is, I think, the opener of the Diamond League this year. She's racing a 1K. And so I think that's going to be the first indicator of whether or not she's on track to run 3:59. Now, we crunched a few more numbers, and here's a comparator, all right? A 3:59 mile on the World Athletics tables is equivalent to a 2:22 kilometer, which,
Yikes.
yeah, that's crazy fast. That's 6 seconds faster than the current world record, which has stood since 1996. Now, I don't know about you. I don't expect Kipyegon to run 2:22 for a couple of reasons. One, she's not a 1K specialist. She's a 1,500 meter and mile specialist. And also, two, this would be a bit of a season opener for her. So I don't think I would expect that fast a time, but this is going to be a really good indicator to see if she's on track.
Yeah, and I think that I think that this is, of course, going to show sort of her trajectory, and I am curious to see if she races more than once leading up to this event in June. One one event you can circle on your calendar and make a bet on that she might show up at is the Prefontaine Classic, which usually takes place at some point in May. That is in Nike's backyard in Oregon, and where Nike does a lot of shoe rollouts every year. The new Pegasus tends to get refreshed there every year as a big event. And of course, they've got a 1500 meter race there. So she could run the 1500 there, which would show sort of where she's at going towards this Breaking4 event. Another thing I noted here that is worth keeping in mind is that some of the key behind the scenes players that were involved in Breaking2 are back. Brett Kirby, who runs Nike's sports science lab, he's back. He was that guy that, if you remember back in Breaking2, the guy who was like on the bike handing Kipchoge the little flasks of Morton over and over again.
Yeah.
That was him. And our acquaintance, Dr. Andrew Jones, who we had on our live show in Boston just last week. I feel betrayed by Dr. Jones. He had to keep the secret from us, and he knew that just days later he'd be announcing this. And then I noticed on Instagram he posted today, and we spoke with him briefly via DM, that he's been holding the secret. He's been working with Faith Kipyegon for 18 months in his lab, testing her biomarkers to help her build her plan towards having success in breaking 4 minutes in the mile. So this has been a project 18 months in the making, which I was really surprised to read, given the fact that the science behind this only came out just a month ago or so. We reported on the paper that pointed to the fact that this was a potential reality, that a woman could go under 4 minutes in the mile, and it could be Faith Kipyegon theoretically on paper if X, Y, and Z were leveraged. So some of the key sort of behind the scenes brains of the operation are in play for Nike. They're certainly going to use every trick up their sleeve to make this thing happen. We're going to see lasers on the track. We're going to see a whole bunch of pacers. We'll probably see pacers doing one lap or even 200 meter or 300 meter type duty to get a maximum pace. And then, of course, I think we're going to see new track spikes. We're going to see new shoes. We're going to see cooling vests. We're going to see all sorts of technology, which I'm fascinated by. And of course, there's going to be a lot of sports science applied to this that we're going to see, hopefully, an effect on the track for the near future to come. Okay, before we wrap this up here, Alex, I got to ask you, bold prediction. We don't know everything right now. There's actually just about as much we don't know that we do know. We do know the date. We know the key athlete. We know the percentages. We know that we have a sense of what some of the sports science and some of the technology might be. There's a lot of unknowns here. What's your prediction here? Is she going to pull it off or not?
I say no. I think the stagger is just a bit too large, unless she's been on to something or doing something that we don't know anything about. I don't think she's getting it. If she does, it's a massive watershed moment. I think she's not going to get it. I think there will be another event in 6 months and maybe another event in a year, because you could replicate miles like the plague, and then it's going to happen, kind of like it did with Kipchoge. So no this time, yes, eventually. She's going to run 4:02. What do you think?
I I think she's going to come extremely close, and I think it's going to be very similar to Breaking4, where it's going to be a lot closer than anybody anticipated. I think it will be something like 4:00:25 or something like that.
Oh my God.
It would be fun to, like, it'll be extremely dramatic, but in that drama, it will point to the fact that this is doable, which is, of course, kind of what everyone I think is hoping for in this situation, right? I would say that this is a little bit of a different scenario than Breaking2. Breaking2 was just like a surprise overall. It was a surprise event. I don't think anyone even anticipated that Nike, they didn't know about the technology of the shoes. There was a lot of unknowns. They didn't know that Kipchoge was going to be that good. They didn't know that the leap was that possible. And they didn't know that Nike had been working in the background on all of these different sort of like ideas of how to kind of like hack the marathon. That could be happening with this mile event as well. And I'm excited to see what they've been working on over the last 18 months, now that we know that this has been this sort of like highly guarded secret at Beaverton, Oregon. And I do have some faith that they've got some, again, some,
You have some faith, do you?
yeah, I have some faith in Kipyegon. They've got some, and just she's at the peak of her powers, right? So she's definitely going to make some sort of a jump with all of this added technology and added sports science. But I am very curious to see what has yet to be revealed, and I'm sure it will be something somewhat substantial, and we'll definitely report on that. I should say, Alex, that, and to our listeners, keep an eye on this feed, because we mentioned Dr. Andy Jones, and when I mentioned that we spoke to him today, we will have him. He has agreed to come on the podcast to talk about that 18-month period. Now that the embargo has been lifted and he is allowed to step out of the shadows and the secret is out in the open, we can now pick his brain about working with Faith Kipyegon on this project over the last 18 months. And we will do so in the very near future, as early as next week. And that will come out as a standalone podcast interview that we'll do with him. So keep an eye on our feed for that. Okay. Mr. Cyr, when we talked to you this morning, you were in the San Francisco area in Silicon Valley, and now you are where?
I am in Sacramento to cover a Canyons 100, a UTMB event, for a couple days before heading to Vancouver to run a 10K. This week's been crazy. Today, 2 podcasts, 2 different hotel rooms. Yeah, I'm struggling to collect my thoughts. And now I gotta go. I need to catch a bus. I need to get to a lab to check out a shoe. So this is my goodbye in 10 seconds.
All right. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you next week.